Well, good day, everybody, and there's a bit of activity behind me, as you can see. A few people packing up to leave. It's now 7:30, 7:31 in fact, and I think the Treasurer is now getting to his feet to start his speech. So I'm allowed to be in here for another, I don't know, half an hour or three-quarters of an hour or so, so I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the budget. And I've got the papers here, the budget papers. In fact, the rest of the papers, the computer's sitting on it, but I've got this one here, so I can answer any detailed questions you might have. But the big story out of the budget is that there's a new bank tax, 0.06 or 0.015 per quarter, or 0.06% per year of liabilities. And that's for the big banks, for those banks with more than $100 billion in deposits. So that's kind of the big four plus Macquarie. And it's going to raise $1.5 billion per year in revenue. So that presumably, it will reduce the bank's profits by that amount. And I think that that's going to be a bit of a problem for the bank's share prices tomorrow, that's for sure. I think there's no doubt about that. That's the main thing. The bank profits tax, $1.5 billion a year coming off bank profits. That's about 5% of the banking sector's profits in total. And so I'd say that there'll be quite an adjustment tomorrow in the bank share prices. It's actually the first time for a while that I've seen a budget where there was a reason for the lockup. Most of the time, there's no reason for the lockup at all. There's nothing particularly market sensitive in the budget. This year there was, which is this bank profits tax. The question, I suppose, for bank shareholders is whether the banks will be able to pass it on. Now, it would require, I think, something like 10 or 12 basis points onto mortgage rates by the big banks to pass it on. They've proved pretty adept so far at passing on the extra cost of the capital that's required, been demanded of them by the regulators. And so maybe there's a case for saying that they will be able to pass it on. But I actually did chat to Scott Morrison, the Treasurer, in the lockup, and he said, well, he's going to be making sure that they don't pass it on. And it's going to come off profits. So we'll see what happens there. Oh, hello, they're packing up around me. Dear, oh dear.
You're right, mate. Yeah.
You're right?
Yeah.
Okay. Stick with us, folks. We're okay. We're allowed to keep going. Although they're packing up the chairs, making a hell of a racket here, so sorry about that. I'm doing a bit of a Facebook live stream here, so we're
connecting with Ben White.
We are connecting. So just perhaps we can keep it down a bit in the background there, please. Anyway, look, please feel free to ask any questions you might have. So the other big things in the budget are I'm trying another connection. The parliamentary Wi-Fi system seems to be failing me, so we'll give that a try. My other connection. It's a bank. Yes, Andrew wants to know: do you think it'll be passed on to mortgage holders or depositors, since it's a bank liabilities tax? I'd say it'll be passed on to mortgage holders, not depositors. They won't be, since it is a bank liabilities tax. You're right. I think that, but the Treasurer did say he's going to try to ensure that it's not passed on. So we'll have to see about that. I think there'll be a bit of a battle. And the other interesting thing is that they've tried to steal a lot of the Labor Party's clothes they've tried to steal a lot of the Labor Party's clothes on a lot of things. The NDIS, I think we've already heard about that. Gonski funding we've heard about. They're proposing to fund the NDIS with a 0.5% increase in the Medicare levy. So the two big taxes in this budget, tax increases, are the bank profits tax and the increase in the Medicare levy. That all kind of, in a sense, all those things offset the things that were stuck in the savings measures that were stuck in the budget in the Senate that they haven't been able to pass, and they've basically given up on those things. There's about $14 billion worth of savings that have got stuck in the Senate and they're not going to pass. They've given up on them, they've taken them out, and they've replaced it with tax increases. And so that's kind of interesting. There's a lot of infrastructure spending in here too. A big increase in infrastructure spending. They talked about, before the budget, they talked about good debt and bad debt. So they've kind of made good on increasing the good debt with infrastructure spending. $75 billion in extra funding over the next few years. A lot of it's for the Western Sydney Airport. They're funding that to the tune of $5.3 billion, plus the inland rail. And that's $8.4 billion. Yeah, I'm getting abandoned here. Oh no, there's a couple of people left. They're packing up the chairs very noisily. John says, is this just the big four banks? Yes, it is. Or it's big five, actually. It's big four banks plus Macquarie. So those with more than $100 billion in deposits. Liabilities, deposits. So not the second tier banks, only the big ones. And the other thing they're doing with the banks is they're introducing or legislating for something called, let me find it. The Banking Executive Accountability Regime. And so what's going to happen is the bank executives have to get a license from APRA. It's not just the bank that has to be licensed, it's the executives individually from now on, and they will be required to have a license and have to front up to the APRA and ask for permission to be allowed to be a bank executive. That'll increase, there'll be consequences for them if they fail to meet expectations, which is amazing. Oh, Michael says the stream's not happening. So lots of stuff on banks, and basically it looks like to me as if they've thought about what would a Royal Commission into banking end up recommending, and they've done that, such as a tax on banks, licensing requirements on bank executives, set up a new Australian Financial Complaints Authority, which is a one-stop shop for complaints. John says I must be on the NBN. No. I'm actually on Telstra's dongle. You probably can't see. I've got a little dongle now. I've given up on the Parliament's Wi-Fi system, and I've got my dongle in, and I'm hoping that that's working. Any feedback from you would be great. If you could tell me whether you're getting me or not, that'd be good. So the other thing to tell you about is the housing affordability measures. Number one measure is that they are going to allow first home buyers to use their super. So the way it's going to work with super is that voluntary contributions of up to $15,000 per year and $30,000 in total. It doesn't have to be over 2 years, it can be over 10 years if you like, but everybody will be able to build what they're saying is you can build a deposit for house inside super up to $30,000, which obviously is pre-tax money. So you can put pre-tax money into super for a house deposit, and then you can withdraw it after 1st of July 2018 to use as a house deposit. So that's $30,000 for an individual, plus $30,000 for the partner. So that's $60,000 for a couple to use as a deposit for a house out of super. So that's a very interesting measure. Obviously, a lot of people are against that because they feel it'll will lead to more demand, increased demand, people paying more for houses. And I think that's probably true if the housing market is strengthening at the time. But if the housing market is tipping over and declining, which it seems to be now, it probably won't make much difference. And the other thing they're doing, which might interest you quite a lot, is that they're trying to incentivise people to downsize by allowing non-concessional contributions of up to $300,000 from selling your house into super. So you can put $300,000 of the proceeds of selling your house, if you're downsizing, into super, as long as the house is, as long as you've had the house for more than 10 years. So those who've had the house for more than 10 years, you can sell the house, downsize, put $300,000 into super. It doesn't actually mean that it's outside the pension means test. What it does mean is that it's taxed at less. So if you kept it outside of super and invested it outside of super, then, you know, obviously it's taxed at the full rate. If it's in super, you get taxed at the concessional rate. So that's meant to be an incentive to downsize, which might work, and it would actually hopefully put more supply up. That might offset the extra demand from allowing people to use their super for a deposit. And there's a few other things to do with funding for homelessness and housing. There had been talk of a bond aggregator for community housing, so the government's actually supporting issuing of bonds by community housing people. They are doing that. They're setting up something called the National Housing Finance and Investment Corporation to do that. So that's kind of interesting. Andrew says, sounds like the first home savers account reborn. Sort of is, I guess. I mean, it's certainly a way of allowing people to get a tax concession for saving for their first home. Obviously, it takes money out of super so that there's less money at the end in super. But, you know, I suppose if you look at super as the whole retirement package as being super plus a house, if you haven't got a house, then super's not going to do you much good at the end anyway. So thanks for all your feedback. It seems to be going okay now. We've got Southern Sydney on board. Thank you. And is the house deposit amount in addition to regular salary sacrifice? Not sure about that. I'll have to check it out, but I'd say so. Well, it's a total amount. You're allowed to have up to 30,000 in super. Take to 30,000 out of super for your house deposit. So however the money got in there, I guess, whether it's salary sacrifice or non-concessional contributions, doesn't matter, I guess. Matthew says, could you see the use of super actually re-inflating the property market? Look, obviously it will allow people to pay more or bring more demand, bring more buyers into the property market. So potentially that would be the case. And if it was last year when the property market was hot and rising rapidly, I think that would be a serious problem. But if, as I expect, the property market is now starting to cool, I don't think it'll be that much of a problem. Although, you know, it will lead to more demand than would otherwise have been the case. That's for sure. Brendan says it's all designed to keep house prices high, so maybe that's right. What other things can I tell you about? Look, I suppose overall, if you look at it overall, what it is kind of a Labor budget by the coalition. And I was just reflecting how, I remember the 2014 budget, as we all probably do, it was a shocker. I mean, mainly because it didn't work. I mean, obviously, if it had worked and they'd been able to cut spending in the way that they proposed, then, obviously we'd be much closer towards a budget balance by now. What happened was, because the 2014 budget was a disaster politically, what happened was that the deficit increased by $10 billion in 2014-15. And it's really been, the past 3 years have been all about trying to recover and repair the damage from that 2014 budget. And this kind of goes a long way towards it. Now, what the 2015 and 16 budgets, last year and the year before, it was kind of all about continuing to press for the savings measures in the Senate. They've now given up on that, and they're increasing taxes instead. It's really just inevitable. Really, it's just facing up to reality. They had to increase taxes, but if you think about it, it's such a long way from where they were when the coalition came in, 2013. You might remember Joe Hockey making speeches, and in fact the budget speech of 2014, in which he said, it's the end of the age of entitlement, and we've got to wind back on government, and we've got to do all these things. And so actually they've now gone 180 degrees back from where they were then, and they're now increasing taxes and maintaining spending, and in fact funding the end. Seems to be a bit patchy, everyone. I'm sorry about that. I'm just doing a live stream here. Can we just keep it down, do you think? Do you reckon you could leave me to it for a little while, 5 to 10 minutes?
I think I can do that for you, mate.
They're packing up around me here. God, I thought they were going to let me go for a little while. Anyway. Yeah, I'm doing something live, so just, I won't be long. No, I know. I understand. He's just trying to do his job. The 10-year enterprise tax plan, the cut in the company tax rate to 25% is still there. They haven't removed that. They've given up on all of the other the savings measures. They've given up on them, but they haven't given up on the cutting company tax to 25%, because I don't think they can. I mean, given the fact that America looks like cutting its company tax rate, and the UK's cut its company tax rate to 20% or less, and there's France now talking about it too. So really, I don't think they can give up on that, but it's certainly been parked. It isn't going to happen anytime soon. Blimey. Oh dear, I might have chosen the wrong place for this. Maybe I'll go and, maybe I'll wander around a bit. What about that? Let's wander around. See if I can find a better place. Got any other? Here we go. Maybe I'll go into the big room. I was trying to find a place in the big room, and Koshi was in there doing a stand-up, and I couldn't do that.
But the system is there needs to be greater.
See, this is live TV, everybody. I tell you what.
What's that?
I am back in the big committee room. You see that big painting up there? There you go. This is the main committee room where most of the budget takes place.
Yeah. It's off in the way.
Alan says, impressive resolve. Yes, I'm going to have to give up soon. It's getting too hard. Crash the ABC set, says Michael. Well, yes, I could probably try that. Robert says, do you think that the $5,000 fee for having your rental vacant for 6 months for non-resident taxpayer is good? Good luck, ATO, collecting the money. Yeah, look, I think like a lot of the small things that are there, including that one, there's some interesting questions about how it's going to be collected. For example, I mean, how are they going to prove that? How are they going to prove that people who are using the super for a deposit for a home are actually doing that? It's going to take a bit of work to achieve that, I would have thought. And you're right, Robert. There's a $5,000 fee for foreign residents who have their rentals vacant for 6 months. So good luck collecting that. There's a 15% tax. So what do I think of the? Matthew says, what do I think of the Canadian 15% tax on property for foreign investors? Oh yeah, well, I don't really have an opinion about that. The problem with the rental tax will be establishing non-residents, but it has had an effect in Canada. Yeah. So I think it's probably complicated, but it's it's worth a try. I think that there is a problem clearly with rental properties being left vacant. Particularly a lot of the overseas investors aren't really using their properties, they're just leaving them vacant, and it's not really helping housing. So it's a race to the bottom with company tax then, says Marta. Where will it stop? Maybe not until all countries stop taxing companies completely. Well, there is a case for not taxing companies completely because, after all, company tax is a sort of a GST. I don't think that'll ever happen, though. But there is a bit of a race to the bottom, and China has been warning America lately that, if you go ahead with this cut in company tax to 15%, you're going to end up in a tax war. And I think that's probably correct. And so I do think, and the problem is that they can't really collect all the tax from individual income taxes because wages are not rising enough, and they're not getting enough. There just isn't enough money to be collected that way.
I'll see you later on.
Good work today, Tom.
Well, we got the feed there.
Any cuts to education, says John? Not that I've seen. In fact, they're going ahead with the Gonski funding, which I don't fully understand, I must confess. Apparently 24 schools, Catholic schools, miss out or get reduced funding out of 9,000. And there's a bit of an uproar among Catholic schools as a result of that. And in fact, here in Canberra, the local Liberal Party is having a meeting tonight, or will be having a meeting tonight, where they're going to be complaining about it. So the Liberal Party's got a bit of a revolt about cuts to Catholic schools. Philippa, I'm not. Am I purple? Philippa says I'm purple. It's pixelated, yes. I've always thought I was a bit of a pixie. Purple pixie. What else can I tell you? What else would you like to know? Come on. Well, okay. Thanks, Ben. Ben says I'm looking good. Well, look, that's been about half an hour. I hope I've summarised it for you. You probably missed out on the Treasurer, but that was really boring, and you'll be able to read your speech later anyway. And it's all happening here. I'm going to have to go. We might try it. We'll try it again next year, but I've got a live stream on Thursday, and we'll talk about it then. We'll talk about it further. Thanks, everybody, thanks for tuning in. It's been really great, really interesting experiment. I'll see you on Thursday. See you.